All right. Well, it is 10 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time, we are so happy to see you. Welcome to the Bentley Rare Book Museum's virtual Coffee with a Curator program. For many of you, since you've been attending, thank you so much for, again, making this a part of your week. I'm so glad about that. And I want to give a special welcome to Hoang Shin. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so happy that you joined us. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. I'm very glad to be here and to be even invited to be part of this. I think it's amazing what you guys are doing, creating conversations from different perspectives and different people in life. So I look forward to sharing what I know about what I do and to connecting with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Oh, wonderful. Of course. Thank you. Thank you. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping before we start. As you all know, I just want to remind you that recordings are available on YouTube. So if you need them, they should all, I'm up to date, so they should all be there. On the KSU Museums, Archives, and Rare Books YouTube channel, you can find recordings from all of the virtual Coffee with a Curator programs that we've had this semester. So that's exciting. Okay, well, we're going to get started. One of our traditions that we have in our program is the Where's Andrew segment. Andrew, can you raise your hand for new people? Okay, great. There's Andrew. So every week, Andrew changes his background to be some sort of bookish place, and usually it aligns with the theme, and he gets really creative about it. Sometimes he gives us clues, sometimes he doesn't. So Andrew, oh goodness, are there any clues that you want to give us this time?
Well, I am at a children's story time, as you might be able to see.
Yes.
And it does also connect to the theme of Diversity Week.
Okay.
Connects to both.
Okay, great. And excuse me, y'all, I'm coming off of a little cold, so that's why I have a tissue. I apologize for that. Okay, well, we are going to go ahead and get started guessing. Sometimes we just start guessing location. I'm going to guess United States.
Yes.
Yay. Okay, so we're in the US. Let's try to figure out geographically where we are. We're in the South?
Yes.
Okay. Southeast?
Yes.
Okay. This is a hard one because I just don't even know where to begin.
Is it Georgia?
It's not in Georgia.
Not in Georgia.
Is it in a major city?
Yes.
Okay.
Birmingham, Alabama.
No.
Oh.
Is it in one of the Carolinas?
No.
Oh, okay.
How about Florida?
Not Florida.
Virginia.
I was going to say, Andrew, give us a hint as to what we're looking at right here. It's a classroom.
It is a children's story time inside of a particular library.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Inside of a particular library in a major city in the South. I feel like I should be able to get it.
Richmond?
No. And it's not actually Virginia.
It's not Virginia.
So I didn't answer that one a moment ago.
Okay.
Is it in, so it's not in Virginia. Is it like around Virginia?
Yeah, it's in that area.
Okay. Is it Washington, D.C. area?
No.
Maryland?
No.
Andrew, you might just have to tell us about this one.
Well, give us a state. Give us a state.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't have guessed. I don't know why I forget about Kentucky. Sorry, people from Kentucky. I don't know why I forget that.
Louisville?
It is in Louisville, yes.
Oh. Louisville Public Library, I'm going to guess.
This is the Weston branch. It was built in, let me pull up my handout.
Okay.
1909 with funds from Andrew Carnegie. But it is the first library built by African Americans and for African Americans in the nation.
Oh, wow. I did not know that was in Kentucky.
Yeah, that's
Um,
surprising.
That's fascinating.
The
See,
library
Andrew
itself was
always-
actually,
Oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, the library itself was founded 4 years before in 1905. But the current building, which is the one that's shown here, was built about in '09.
Oh, I was just saying that Andrew always finds these pieces of history that, just have escaped me at least, and escaped a lot of us. So thank you, Andrew. And again, as usual, Andrew has created a great handout for us. So it's in the chat. So if you want to know more about this place, you can download the handout. So thank you, Andrew. That was really educational. Appreciate that. All right, so we will go ahead and dive into our interview with Hoang Shin. Again, so happy to have you. I have a list of questions for Hoang, but I would like audience members, if you have questions, I really want you to sprinkle those in there too. I think the easiest thing, please either raise your hand using the raise your hand function, or you can just put your question in the chat and I'll monitor that. So I want to make sure I get y'all's questions answered too if you think of something. So it'll be informal, but it'll be really, really fun. So before we begin, I would like to give you an idea of who we're speaking to, so we can learn a little bit about Hoang, and then we'll go into the actual questions. Hoang Shin is an elementary school educator and children's book author who currently resides in Rockville, Maryland. She has authored and illustrated 2 children's books titled Tao's Birthday Lunch and Goldilocks and the 3 Recycling Trucks. In addition to writing, she is also the creator of an educational channel on YouTube called the Spout and Sprout Learning Channel. As she continues to create and write, her aim is to inspire learning communities and young readers everywhere. So again, welcome, Hoang Shin.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first question. And again, y'all, if you have questions, please put them in the chat or raise your hand. So first off, something basic. Tell us a bit about your personal and professional background, perhaps where you grew up, what did you study in school, what were your hobbies, things like that.
Okay. Well, I guess I can start with where I'm from. I was born in Vietnam, and I came to the United States at a very young age, I think around 3 or 4 years old, with my parents. And upon coming to the US, we arrived in Louisiana, where we stayed with my dad's brother, I think for about a year or 2. And then before we moved over to Maryland, where a lot of my mother's family resided at the time. So a majority of my childhood and adolescent years were spent in Maryland. After high school, I got really involved in a lot of ministry work through church. And I spent a lot of my, early 20s serving local communities around the DC metro area, as well as some overseas missions with my church. And that was, I would say, my first exposure to working with young children, like in a school setting. And that was where I think my desire for teaching children was ignited. So after taking that break after high school and traveling and serving around communities and stuff, I decided to pursue an education in elementary education specifically. And that led me down to Atlanta, Georgia, where I studied. And after completing my studies, my husband and I, we decided to move, to a couple of states, like bouncing back and forth. And we finally decided to come back to Georgia, where I took my first teaching job under your wonderful, phenomenal mother-in-law, my principal at the time. And I just fell in love with teaching, just being, I'm sorry, I'm like so bad with interviews.
No, this is great.
I get so nervous. But I was really grateful for the opportunity. I think I grew up a lot as an educator, learned a lot about compassion for children and families and how that all plays a part in teaching and in the school's role to the community. And that's where I drew a lot of inspiration for a lot of my writing as well, like seeing the different personalities that's like in each classroom, as well as, adult personalities and stuff too, like just meeting the different characters in your day-to-day life and or observing different scenarios in youth, in social situations. I draw a lot of that into my own personal writing. Did I veer off topic?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much. But I want to circle back to something that you said, 'cause I think it's easy to gloss over. You said you were, born in Vietnam and then moved to Maryland. And it's interesting because this, being KSU's Diversity Week, I guess I'm curious, like, how was that transition, and how did your ethnicity, and then, how did that influence the way you saw the world as a child and adolescent, especially living in, moving to a new country is a big deal.
Yeah, I think it actually had a lot of impact on how I saw myself and how I viewed the world. Because moving to a different country, it's hard enough, on its own already, learning a new language and fitting into a new culture. I remember that being kind of a challenge. And but I think when you're young, I think every kid, every child from any background can all relate to a common thing, which is just trying to fit in, no matter where you're from. I think everyone's always faced with that same challenge, like trying to fit in, be like everyone else. But I think seeing the difference in yourself is more apparent when you're coming from a place or a culture that's so different from where you are, So for me, that was kind of a challenge. And one of the ways that I found like an outlet was through books. Like my favorite place to be was in the library, the local library, or just checking out books from my school library. I would just indulge in stories and books and imagine myself in different places and things like that. But unfortunately, back then when I was growing up, it was like in an era where diversity wasn't as emphasized. So in a lot of the reading material that I was reading, or a lot of the shows that I was watching as a young child, it didn't really have any characters that looked like me or represented anyone with, a similar background as myself. There might have been, but it was really rare. So it just made me feel like more aware of my difference.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one of the things that kind of inspired me to write Tao's birthday lunch as well, to kind of share that experience of, feeling a little different, but it's okay because everyone else is also experiencing the same story, the same challenge, even though they're from other different backgrounds,
Absolutely. So since books were kind of, they were a comfort to you in your early years during, of course, that transition. Was your passion for books and reading supported at an early age? Did you have like a family member or friends that would really encourage you to go to the library, or was it something that you just took initiative on your own?
Well, coming from a family that just came to the country, I know my parents were dealing with a lot of challenges, like finding, a job to put, food on the table. And it wasn't as easy for them because they came here without, degrees or without work experience or things like that, or even, without the language. So it's really hard for them and they had to work a lot. So my sisters and I were actually at home with our grandmother a lot, who didn't speak English and who wasn't able to take us around, like other parents or guardians might have. But I think when I was young, like I had that love for stories. So it was kind of self-initiated, where I would just, try to create my own stories from the books that I did bring home from school. And my parents, even though they work really hard, they found time to take my sisters and I to the library. And sometimes they would drop us off and we would spend like an hour or two there before they'd pick us up, and we'd come home with like, like armfuls of books to enjoy for the rest of the week. So I think that was one of my fondest memories, just to be at the library and choose like, so many treasures to take home with me.
Absolutely. I would like to take this moment to shout out all library workers
Yeah.
Because it makes such a big difference. That really warms my heart to hear that experience that you had. So along those lines, the books that you've published so far are children's books. What makes the children's book genre important to you? You kind of started that, but now that you are no longer a child and an adult, what makes that genre so important to you?
I don't know, working with children and having the experience of sharing a book with them and reading to them and seeing like their eyes light up, or that they're able to make a connection with the story or a connection with each other in a conversation about the book. Like, it's just, I don't know, something about that just feels really special to me, and it just really inspiring to me. And I want to be a part of that. I want to create stories and books that create conversations and I don't know, that make children feel like they have a connection to something, that's also shared by other people in the world or people in their classroom or a neighbor or whoever in their community.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. So unlike many children's book writers, you do illustrate your own books. So brava, I know that's hard. Describe how you approach the complex and admirable task of writing and illustrating a book. Specifically, do you work on the text and illustration simultaneously, or does one process kind of always come before or after the other?
It depends on the project. Right now I have like a couple of notebooks full of just ideas that I've jotted down, like I'll have moments when I wake up from sleep and, think of something really cool and I'll like run somewhere and jot it down, or in the middle of the day, like I'll be inspired by an idea and just make a collection of different ideas, I guess. And I guess whatever stands out the most to me or that I'm most drawn to, I sit down and kind of try to develop a storyline. And it's just like the basic, overall story, like what is the overall story that I want to share? And then that inspires me to kind of create like characters. Mm-hmm. And like I'll sit and I'll start doodling like what I feel like the character should look like. And in the process of creating the art, like I'm just kind of, I don't know, like in a zone of just creativity and coming up with new ideas to add to the story. So I'm always taking notes and adding on, elaborating as I'm working. So I guess it would be a simultaneous activity process.
Absolutely. And I created this little graphic so that y'all can kind of see what Hoang's illustrations look like a bit. Let me show this. So you can kind of see exactly kind of, so really bright, colorful, really approachable. My daughter absolutely loves these books, loves both of these books. So I wanted to give y'all an example, or you can see what it actually looks like, the covers of the books look like.
Can I share something with you guys about the illustration process of this?
Please do.
Yeah, Child's Birthday Lunch, it was actually, it came from a book project that I had in one of my college courses. Like we had to create a story, with a diversity theme. So I came up with this idea that was inspired by my sister's birthday party and also a birthday party that I had gone to when I was in 5th grade myself. And so anyway, back to the illustration. This was not the original illustration for my book when I first created it. I had hand drawn everything. And like one of the artistic challenges that I faced when I was like an early illustrator was recreating the same character and being consistent with the way it looked, in the different emotions and the positions in the story. So it was kind of daunting, like having to redraw things over and over again and kind of messing up. And once, something in the picture is flawed, it's kind of hard to erase and start over because it's like an actual physical, paper drawing. So to get around that, I had to, I started from cutting out the character and like positioning it around the scene and, taking a photo of it, as the actual scene. So it's kind of very, very super amateur, but, like it really helped me at the time and it allowed me to share the story. But I think as an artist, like I grew by finding ways to get around that. So what you see here is actually hand-drawn backgrounds, but the actual characters are characters that I learned how to draw or create through PowerPoint, surprisingly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I actually learned how to do that during 2020 when I had to learn a whole, different array of like technology to use like in the classroom as a teacher. So, I mean, it forced me to, to learn how to create in different ways. And I think there are lots of negative things about, 2020, but a lot of great things came out of it too, which was forcing a lot of people to learn new techniques, new technology, and things like that. And this was something that was birthed out of such a crazy year.
That is incredible. I'm so glad you gave us insight into that. And that's really an amazing way to do the illustration. So the same thing for Goldilocks. Is that the same kind of process you used?
Actually, yeah, Goldilocks, I also created in the same year in 2020. Mm-hmm. So it's the background that I created that was hand drawn, and then all the characters that I created was created through PowerPoint.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. I've always wondered kind of how I'm very curious about how illustrators do kind of like complete their work because and the reason why, especially in in our rare book collection, it can be really hard when we see books from 200, 300 years ago to know the original method they used for illustrating the books. I'm always curious to ask contemporary authors as well, kind of. And yeah, I would have never guessed that. That's fascinating. Yeah, so let's continue talking about then Tao's birthday lunch. You talked about what inspired you, what inspired the story of this book. But I guess I have a question also around, we talked about kind of that you created this is something good that came out of the pandemic. So what was it like specifically? I understand writing and illustrating during a pandemic when we're all home, but actually getting it published and getting it, on different outlets and making sure people know about it. What was that like during a pandemic?
Well, actually, before I answer that, I've created this story like years ago, maybe like about 7 years ago, or if not more. And I've always wanted to publish it, but it's a really hard process. Like when I was researching on how to find like a publisher, and then I found out information about like agents and all that stuff. It just seemed like so overwhelming to me, like the whole process of looking how to get more exposure for my story, or even knowing where to get started. So, I mean, the whole idea of it getting published was too overwhelming. So I kind of just shelved the idea for the longest time. And then in 2020, when I was recreating it again, I discovered Kindle Direct Publishing, which allows authors to self-publish. And it's been the most amazing thing for me because I don't have to jump through so many hoops to share something that I want to share to the world. It just made that, the process a lot easier for me as somebody that's creating, reading materials.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's really good because I was wondering how that would have worked. So that's exciting. So that was one of the ways you were able to get your book into the public. Do you have any outreach or marketing tips for emerging authors? Just getting people to know that this book is out there.
I try to share it with as many people as I know, and I share it with anybody that's working in a school that can also share it with their students. And I am not heavy on social media. The only social media account that I do have is Instagram, and that's a source that I share my work on too. Sometimes, but with marketing, I think I would have to learn a little bit more about how I could get exposure for it. But for me, my personal goal was just to get it out there, just to make it available for anybody that wants to give it a chance and to share it with them, other people, or, just enjoy it themselves.
Absolutely. So what do you hope children will learn about diversity or even just representation by when they read Tao's Birthday Lunch?
That it's okay to be different. That is actually a wonderful thing. And that you're not the only one that's different, know. And I think just being different, makes you unique and it makes you special. And I think it should be a celebrated thing. And I think in the story of Tao's Birthday Lunch, seeing that all of the friends that came to her birthday party came from different backgrounds and they ate different things, like they all had different, life experiences that they're bringing and sharing with one another, and they're finding appreciation for.
That's exciting.
So I hope that that children that, get an opportunity to read the book, that they'll walk away with just a sense of appreciation for their own background.
Absolutely. That's wonderful.
And I think that was something that I kind of found challenging also, like when I was younger, was that, I didn't want to be different. I wanted to be like everyone else, and I didn't really appreciate a lot of the things that were from my own background until much later in life. And if I could rewind time, I would go back and really celebrate all the ways that I was different, all the ways that my parents and my family were different, and just appreciate it. And I hope that I can share that that idea with the future generations.
Thank you so much. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your second book, Goldilocks and the Three Recycling Trucks. I just love this story. I feel like Goldilocks has finally kind of been redeemed. The original one is like kind of questionable. But what inspired you to adapt and modernize this classic children's tale?
Well, I was actually inspired by my own children. I have two boys, and they love trucks. They love anything that has wheels. So I wanted to create something that that they would enjoy, too, because believe it or not, they're not a big fan of Tao's Birthday Lunch, even though their mom created the work. So I just wanted to create something that was kind of playful and that they are somewhat familiar with, and that they can also enjoy because they see something in it that that they also like, which is, garbage trucks. And I thought it was also a cool way to, to cross over and to show that, girls can also enjoy garbage trucks and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Too. It's not just a boy thing.
Exactly.
And I don't know, that story has a lot of layers to me. And it's also about serving the community whenever you see that there is a need, that you can be a part of making that change and not wait for somebody else.
Right. Let's continue talking about that, kind of how you decide which messages and values to convey through your children's books, because you have spent a lot of time with children, having your own and being an educator. So kind of how do you know what children are going to, I guess, connect to and what's going to inspire them?
Oh, I've read many books. As a teacher, I've read like many books. And prior to teaching elementary school, I was also a pre-K teacher. So I mean, I at least read like one story a day,
Yeah.
and so I am familiar with what types of stories or patterns or styles that that children are more drawn to when I'm reading it to them, So I try to pick up on little things from the books that I do personally enjoy and see my students enjoy, and I try to incorporate that into my own personal work as well.
That's wonderful. And Barbara, I see your comment, and Hoang, I'm hoping that you will be open to this. Barbara has a great idea, wondering if you'd read an excerpt from your work. So if you I don't know if you have it with you.
I do.
You do? Okay. Yes. Since we're talking about, that was most of the questions I had about the specific works. So if you would like to read an excerpt from one of them, we would absolutely love that.
Absolutely. But you'll have to excuse me. I have to run and grab it really quick.
Yes, that is no problem. Please do. While Hoang is grabbing that, I would love, I'm thinking about all of our favorite children's books. I don't know if anyone wants to share a favorite children's book that they have, something that they remember to this day. I have a couple that I could mention. I really love Patricia Polacco's work. I don't know if anyone, she also illustrates the books that she writes. My favorite one was Chicken Sunday, because it reminded me of the woman who used to take care of me when we lived in Connecticut. Love that book. It actually kind of makes me cry now, but I was also a fan of the American Girl doll. I had Addie, and I loved those books as well. Oh, Tamara loved the Just So stories to be read out loud. Great. Anybody else have a favorite children's book that they want to mention really quickly? Oh, yes. My mom said Jamaica's Find. That's a book that she really likes because she's convinced that someone saw me on the street and like threw and used me as inspiration. Because I kind of did look like the girl that was the protagonist when I was about 4. That's funny. That's great. So if you think of one, please do put it in the chat. I love to have broader discussions about children's books, so please do. But Hoang, which book are you going to read from?
Yeah, I'm going to share with you Tao's birthday lunch.
Okay.
I'm not sure which part I would want to start with.
So the premise of this book is that it's Tao's birthday, and she's really excited for her birthday lunch. But she doesn't know if her friends are going to appreciate the Vietnamese dishes that she enjoys at home, that her grandmother makes. So she kind of asks grandma to make food that's more normal. But grandma doesn't quite understand the assignment. But yes, that's a good thing.
Closer to what they serve in the cafeteria, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess I can start with the beginning.
Okay.
Put on my teacher voice. Wednesday is my favorite day of the week. My friends and I always have our favorite lunch choices on this day. Sure. Since today is Wednesday, I am having a chicken sandwich. Mia is having spaghetti. Vera is having chicken nuggets, and Donald is having pizza. I cannot wait for my friends to come over this Saturday. It will be my birthday, and I will be turning 7. Noi, my grandma, is going to cook all of my favorite Vietnamese dishes for the party. I can't wait for everyone to taste her cooking. It's the best. So in the beginning of the story, it's just pretty much Tao and her excitement for her friends to try all the foods that she really enjoys at home. But as the story goes on, she kind of starts having doubts, like, hey, I haven't seen any foods like this ever served in the cafeteria. So maybe my friends might not like it so much. And so, she starts to panic a little, and she asks her mom or her grandmother to kind of modify the dishes, but it didn't really turn out the way that she had anticipated. So it's a cute little story about, a lot of things that young children might go through when they're having when they're planning social situations for their friends to enjoy, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's really amazing. We won't give it away, but the reactions of her friends really say a lot also about their backgrounds as well. And it's really beautiful. So and I learned a lot too. I was like, oh, these dishes look so good. And
Yeah, it makes me hungry.
they look amazing. And just it's really, I learned a lot. So it's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful story. And my daughter, again, loves it and loves Goldilocks as well.
Thank you.
Yes. So my next question is, how does your identity, we kind of talked about it, but how does your identity as a woman of color impact your writing process? And have you faced any challenges because of this intersectionality?
How has it challenged my process of writing?
Yeah, maybe like process of writing, or even just, what you feel like, whether or not you think people will be receptive to things you write, things like that.
In the past, I feel like it might have not been received as much as it would today. And that's something that I really appreciate with the way trends are moving now. Like, when I go to Barnes and Nobles or any bookstores, it looks completely different than how I remember it, from even like a decade ago. Like, there are books with diverse characters, diverse backgrounds, and I love seeing that. So I feel like there's more reception, I guess, to the type of work that I'm trying to put out now, because there's just more of an interest and more acceptance, more celebration for diversity, which I think is an awesome thing to see.
That's really great. Yeah, I think it has, this has changed a bit, and which is helpful. So that's great. And you're part of that change. So I think that's really, really amazing. So if you're comfortable sharing, you don't have to, but what kinds of writing projects are you working on at the moment, or are you focusing on something else right now?
Actually, I've been really thinking about extending or expanding Tao's story. I just have so many of my own childhood experiences, and that I would like to put into writing and create stories around, because I still feel like it'll always be relevant to any young child growing up in any generation. And I just that's something that I'm working on right now. But just recently, I helped a friend of mine with her illustrations for her own book. She, like myself, had lots of materials just piled up and just collecting dust. And I just wanted to play a part in helping her get something onto a shelf somewhere, off the dust. So yes, that's currently what I'm doing right now.
That's great. So along those same lines too, first of all, I would be very much in support of expanding Tao's birthday lunch, because I learned so much. I know Eliana learned so much, and I just think that's great. And Christian Kelly, one of my coworkers, says that he agrees it's been nice increasingly seeing more mirror books. I love the way you said that, Christian, mirror books for those of various backgrounds. It's truly important. So we're all in agreement with that. Last question, are there any books that you are actively collecting or reading right now?
Oh my gosh, I just love children's books. Like, I have this unhealthy addiction to going to library book sales or used books sales, and just rummaging through old books. And I think my biggest thrill is just to find old vintage books. I just love looking at the different types of illustration, how it's changed through the years, or even seeing the progression of very little diversity to more diversity now. And I don't know, I can't stop buying, but it's part of, what inspires me. So I think I'm the biggest fan of Mark Brown that writes and
yeah.
illustrates Arthur books.
Yeah.
Mostly for just the illustration. It's I love like how he creates like I guess living spaces that look very homey, you know, like there are lots of patterns and curtains with floral designs all over the place. Like it's just kind of my style, you know, and I draw a lot of inspiration from his work as well. So that's one that I collect.
That's great. I didn't know that. That's really amazing. But I can see that. Yes. And it does. I think that's a really good way to describe it, because I don't think I've ever really thought about it that way, but you're right. It has a very homey feel, those Arthur books. And you're right. I like
the clutter of like different cool things. I just love the way he draws.
That's wonderful. Well, you're going to have to, whenever you're in Georgia next, you'll have to stop by the Bentley Rare Book Museum, because we have a big children's literature collection, and it probably would be interesting for you to see. And it ranges. So it would be quite interesting for you to see some of the changes that have been made to children's literature now, because a lot of ours are from the 19th century.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. And just fun fact, y'all, they're really, books for children weren't widely popular until about the 19th century. So I think we have so many now, they're ubiquitous now, but they used to not be. I've actually was looking, I think one of the first actual bookstores for children opened in 1916 in Boston. So that idea of like a bookstore specifically for kids. I think it was called the Bookshop for Boys and Girls. So yeah, it's now it feels like, you know, a long tradition, but there was a lot of time when there actually weren't books specifically for kids. And so
what a sad time.
I know, absolutely. When children were kind of viewed as just little adults. But as we've discussed throughout this program, you know, children that exist and that find themselves, you know, identifying with historically marginalized communities often just didn't see themselves reflected in a lot of mainstream children's literature until much later than that. But as Hoang mentioned, things are definitely changing. And I hope that I wanted to just put in another link for Read for Unity. They're one of our partners here at the Bentley Rare Book Museum, and their whole purpose is to make diverse books accessible to communities. And they especially, of course, children's books, really great organization. So I will go ahead and put their link in the chat in case anyone is interested. There's also a little free library that Read for Unity curated for us in my exhibition. If you ever want to come and check and, you know, get one of those books, they're free. But I wanted to just see if anyone else had a question for Hoang about anything we talked about, her writing, illustrative processes, about, you know, her background, interest in children's literature, anything like that.
Hi, this is Tamara. I've been thinking a lot. I enjoyed your presentation very much, and I love, you know, the development of these mirror books. I think it's wonderful to be able to find representations. I'm a little bit curious because I know in really in the history of people and in various societies, people's identity were really based more on sort of lots of different things that we didn't control. But you were considered sort of a person within your whatever that was, your community, either your family and your literal neighborhood, you know, your gender, your roles, all these different kinds of things. So there, the default was you weren't concerned about differences. You know, you know who you are and you know what your identities are. And I wonder, you know, in the West and this, increasingly so, there's a great emphasis on difference. And I guess my question is, I'm kind of curious, is there a generational kind of difference in viewing difference and identity? And what from your perspective, what kinds of things are you seeing in terms of that? And again, how it affects children? And
I think it's more, I feel like right now, like the society is more exposed to just, I guess, overall diversity of just cultures and, you know, the little things like, you know, the little things from every little culture, such as food or the way we dress or the languages that we speak, things like that. There's more interest in it. And I feel like there's a more awareness of, gosh, I don't know how to put it into words, like a more awareness of how I guess basically how different we are as just a global community from different countries that all have something special to contribute to the world or the community that we're living in.
I agree with that too, because I'm thinking like someone once taught me the difference between, you know, like diversity versus inclusion. And maybe, I don't know, maybe years ago, the focus was definitely on like diversity, just like plopping instances of different people into publications, into work environments and showing, okay, we're done. And maybe now I think the current generation, maybe perhaps I think inclusivity is the goal, like truly appreciating.
Yes, I agree.
Validating.
Yeah. Yes.
You know?
So before it was just more of like, you know, am I checking off the list? Like, do I have all races included in this text or in whatever project that I'm doing? But now it's more, I guess, with social media and all that stuff, there's more exposure into the lives of those diverse people, you know? So you're seeing them as real people, real families, real communities, real individuals, not just like, oh, you know, this person is that color, this person's from this race. It's not so generic, I guess. So now it feels more personal. And when you view diversity or think of the term diversity, it feels more personal than it did before. I think that's what I was trying to communicate before.
Yeah.
It's just a more personal experience because you're more aware of it and you see it more in media. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a greater sense of awareness of what diversity really means.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Tamar. That was a great question.
Yes, it was.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? No? All right. Well, can we just give Hoang Shin a round of applause? Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending this time talking with us. It's always great to talk to someone who is, you know, we talk about books, of course, every week, but really getting a chance to speak to an author and illustrator, especially an author and illustrator of color. And it's just been wonderful to learn a little more about your process, what inspires you, and what you hope your readers are able to gain from what you do. So we are so appreciative of your time. And we just are excited for you to keep writing.
Thank you.
Illustrating. Yay. Thank you so
much.
Thank
you again for inviting me and just letting me be a part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're so thankful also to KSU for Diversity Week. This is really important to have these. We should be always having these conversations, but it's wonderful to be reminded to have these kind of conversations. So we're so grateful. But anyway, thank you all so much for coming. I really look forward to next week, and I will see you all then. Take care.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.